YAHOO. You always have options and opportunities. So no matter how bad the situation, there are options. All of life is a continuum if I'm choosing to learn and stretch and grow. Oh my goodness gracious, like, with Pulse or the Parkland school shooting, everybody needs counseling. No. Some people need counseling. Not everybody needs counseling after crisis. Everybody needs community. Is the psychological term we give to resilience. It's post-traumatic growth. Post-traumatic growth is being able to say, this is painful, this is hard, but it didn't kill me. What doesn't kill me makes me stronger. I'm going to climb out of this step by step. And as you get started on that journey, you'll meet some amazing people along the way. Steve Jobs, who invented Apple Computer down the line, could have been diagnosed with ADD, but they looked at it as creativity, not as a limitation. So we're going to move people, Courtney, from a label to living their life. And I believe when you have that perspective, you live life better.
Hey there. Welcome to the Peakality Podcast, your new favorite spot for unlocking the best version of yourself. Ready to level up your life? We've got you. We're all about blending technology with human wisdom and the drive to be better, personally and professionally. Each week, we dig into the real stuff. Strategies, tools, and mindsets that cut through the noise and help you thrive. No fluff, just practical insights from experts, thought leaders, and people who've been there, done that. And we're here to break it all down into easy steps. Whether you're kicking off a fresh start or physicians seeking to inspire your patients, we've got stories, tips, and tricks to inspire growth in each area of life. Your peak potential's calling, starting right now. Hit subscribe, join our crew, and let's move forward today. Today, we welcome Dwight Bain to the show. Dwight is a nationally recognized counselor, author, and speaker who has spent decades helping people navigate stress, crisis, and life transitions. He's been called in on some of the most difficult moments, from national disasters to national tragedies, to help individuals, families, and organizations rebuild with resilience. His insight into mental health, trauma, recovery, and leadership has impacted thousands, and today he's here to share how we can all build stronger foundations for growth and healing. So thank you again for being here, and we'll just get started and talk. And we'll just start with like the fact that you've been at the center of so many critical moments where people have needed hope and guidance. Can you share how your first felt like called to this work, and why, and how it all got started?
I am happy to answer that question because in the great circle of life, Simba, everything's connected, right? And so to finish graduate school at Liberty University, I needed one class to be able to finish on time. And I'm looking at the schedule. Only one class worked on the schedule, and it was crisis management.
Oh,
I had
wow.
interest in crisis management. I had an interest in graduating to come home and marry my girlfriend, who became my wife. I just wanted to finish and thought, okay, fine, I'll take a class in crisis. So anyway, my first year as a counselor here back in Orlando, there's a mass shooting in Palm Bay, Florida, where a very disgruntled old guy with a gun went to a Winn-Dixie, then to a Publix, murdered 8 people in the parking lot. I mean, it was one of Florida's first mass murders. And I'd been on a TV show, and somebody at the TV station said, "Do you know anything about crisis?" And I said, "I've taken one class." They said, "That's more than anybody here. Can you come help?" And we came and did TV shows, started working with first responders of how to deal with a sudden critical incident. And from then, Courtney, I just learned as I went of take a class here, take a class there. Orange County Sheriff Kevin Berry, back in the late 1990s, said, "I need you to get certified in this new thing called critical incident stress debriefing, because Orlando may have a crisis event. You just need to get prepared." And I said, "Okay, Kevin, if you believe in it." His wife was from Brazil, and he understood, you've always got to be prepared. So I got, certified in stuff. And then all of a sudden Ground Zero happened, and I had the right credentials to go to Ground Zero. Columbine with my friend, Dr. Jeff Gardier. And so this piece leads to this piece, leads to this piece, leads to this piece, because all of life, here we go, here's the circle. All of life really is a circle, because you're either in a crisis, you're coming out of a crisis, or buckle up, Buttercup, because you're about to go into a crisis, because all of life is about change and growth and things work and then they don't work. But if I'm able to flow around that cycle, then we build something called resilience. And resilient strength is what we all want. But frequently, Courtney, what people don't want is the crisis part is how you build the resilient strength. You don't get it in a book. You get it by living life.
Yeah, unfortunate. But with that said, I mean, I think that resilience is what makes anyone that adversity really enables people to grow. I mean, without that adversity, you're not going to have any growth. Exactly to your point. It's painful and it's uncomfortable, to say the least. But so long as you, have that perspective, and how do you advise people to really even like approach resilience and approach, that crisis and know that you can get through it? I mean, what is your strategy? I mean, how do you guide people through that circle and that process?
Well, great question, because usually I meet somebody and they're right here in the crisis, or it just happened and they've gone through the divorce, they've gone through the bankruptcy, they've gone through their child saying, I will never talk to you again. Right now, Harvard study says 1 in 5 young adults have completely cut off their family of origin over political or religious reasons. I mean, like, you are dead for me. 1 in 5, 20%. And so when you look at what's the crisis, maybe they got suddenly fired. We've seen so much of that with AI replacing tens of thousands of jobs. So I meet somebody at this crisis point. The first thing I remind them to do, take a nostril breath, hold it 4 seconds. And there's a concept called 4x4 breathing. Navy SEALs teach it, and it's just a way to kind of reset the brain, right? And so this part of our brain, the prefrontal cortex, when I'm in a crisis, that part of my brain goes, I am not happy right now, and it turns off. So it's really hard to think. People, they'll say I've got a fog, I'm fuzzy, I don't know. And so I give them some skills to say, let's just calm down the biology of your brain. And now you're through the crisis, you've been fired, you're laid off. Let's start to piece together and I remind folks, okay, you're not dead. We're all going to die, right? Everybody dies, but it's not today. And so take a breath and then let's figure out and develop a plan, because no matter how bad the situation, I taught my kids when they went away to college, YAHOO. You always have options and opportunities. So no matter how bad the situation, there are options. There are opportunities. I remember somebody that was fired from a very high profile job, number 2 person in his company of over 20,000 employees, and the severance package and all the things happened. And that company, a couple of months later, went through a major catastrophic incident where they laid off thousands of people. And he said, I got a severance package. I was able to sell my stock. Years ago, I talked to somebody who was at Enron and was fired because of sexism. And they said, we don't really want women here. And I remember, and I was coaching her through the process of, you got fired, and she sold her stock. And then the next year, Enron became one of the biggest collapses in the history of the United States. So it's being able to say, all right, bad things happen. It's awful, I know. But what can we do here? And then when somebody says, wow, Dwight, I think I've got it going. I'm feeling pretty good. I'm feeling pretty strong. It's going to be great. I'm never going to have another problem. And then I remind them, okay, take a breath, because all of life is a continuum. If you finish first grade, you're feeling pretty good. And you think, first grade was a piece of cake. Well, then you get to second, it's a little harder. Or you finish your baccalaureate degree and you say, I'm going to get my master's. It's a little harder. And you finish your master's, you do postdoc, and you think, man, are they trying to kill me here in this residency? All of life is a continuum if I'm choosing to learn and stretch and grow. And then the other part of that, and have conversations just like this one.
Oh my gosh. First of all, those stories are remarkable. And I love that perspective that even though it seems like a crisis now, it may be something that is really benefiting you in the long run. And it's just about perspective, and give it time, and that resiliency, that pushing you through. It's a beautiful perspective that I have not heard before. I mean,
thank you.
And you talk about it like not as much of a bounce back, but a pushing through. And I love that perspective. Can you help me understand, like, when someone's in that moment and they're breathing, like, how not to look at it as I'm going to bounce back, I'm going to fight through, but how do you glide through? How do you push through? How do you, what does that look like, rather than the perspective of a bounce back?
Yeah. And I'm glad you said that, because you and I share a common connection to know that there is one basketball team in the history of the NCAA, right? And if we know that would be Kentucky, and other people cheer for other teams. And I understand it's how they grew up, and maybe they were dropped on their head as children. Because my grandmother went to the University of Kentucky, and when I'm in Lexington, Kentucky, I mean, but we all understand also this phrase, well, we'll get them next year. So when people say, well, we should have, you don't live in the past. You move forward to say, okay, what can we learn? And there are championship seasons, and then there are, ouch, that hurt. And what happens? Well, if I keep learning and growing, if I keep Yahoo, you always have options, opportunities, then I'm able to say, here's what I learned. One of my first speech coaches taught me this. Her name is Patricia Fripp, and she said, I blew it. I knew it. Here's what I learned through it. And when I'm able to say, what did I learn? Some people go, they meet somebody in college, and it's great, and it's wonderful. And the most common time people divorce is about 2 years after they married the person they met in college. Because as their brain starts to develop, and as their brain starts to mature and grow and change, somewhere in their late 20s, they say, what I would pick at 30 is completely different than what I picked at 20. And sometimes to not be in a failed relationship and to say, this isn't working and it's terribly sad, but here's what I've learned and I'm going to move on. And if you don't want to move on, farewell, live long and prosper. And so sometimes when I look at the painful thing yesterday, can sometimes be, wow, getting fired from that job, that industry. Remember, it goes back a little bit of time, but I love Walt Disney history. Walt Disney got fired from his first regular job for not being creative enough. And he's in Kansas City. Walt Disney, not creative enough. They fire him. He actually is so leveraged with debt, he has to file his first bankruptcy. And he's just, 20 years old, because the debts are so intense, and it leads to, there's nothing left in Kansas City. I guess I'll go to California and I'll start a new studio. And his brother Roy said, well, you know what? Let's start the Disney Brothers Animation Studio. So Walt Disney getting fired here led to a very different story in California. And so sometimes when people say, wow, the love of my life has divorced me, sometimes you need to remember to take a breath, always through the nose, clears that part of our brain, and then exhale and think, if somebody didn't love me, didn't want to be with me, and they want to run off with somebody else, it's painful, but I'm glad because they were always going to leave. And if this company didn't care enough to value my position, then they were always going to fire me, let me go. And Courtney, it's exactly what you said, perspective. Because if I can embrace that perspective, then I can endure. And I remind people, if you can breathe through it, you can get through it. We get through it one step at a time. Not, what am I going to do 2 years from now? No, what am I going to do today? How can I get through today? What are my options today? Who can I call today? Who can I reach out to today? Because we can help each other get through things. We all need community. Sometimes people after a crisis will say, oh my goodness gracious, like, with Pulse or the Parkland school shooting, everybody needs counseling. No. Some people need counseling. Not everybody needs counseling after a crisis. Everybody needs community.
Like that.
Support system. Yes. We need each other. We take care of each other. And the data shows even after a horrible incident, a horrible, like the terrorist attacks in New York City on 9/11, and the powers that be, the people in governmental authority said everybody's going to need counseling. And I work there. They didn't. About a third of people got PTSD, and you can recover from post-traumatic stress disorder. But 2/3 of the people said, this is awful. But you know what? We're New Yorkers. Is that all you got? Godzilla comes to New York. King Kong comes to New York. Everybody comes to New York because you cannot take New Yorkers down. And what happened was the spirit of these people in the city rose up, and they didn't need counseling because they had community. Yes. Not everybody needs counseling. Everybody needs community.
Oh, I think that's so beautiful. Well, and what do people do when they can't, when they feel as though that they don't have a community, or they're trying to start a new community, or that the community that they were part of betrayed them in some way, or, what is that? Because, you talked about how, a lot of people are moving away from their family. What do you do when you change and you evolve? You're not who you were when you were 20, at 30. Like, how does someone discern when they are in a crisis moment and they found themselves without a community or without the support? What do you advise those people to do? Is that when they go and seek counseling and then start to reach out to new people? What would you advise people that have found themselves in those situations?
Well, it's a great question, because the former Surgeon General said the greatest mental health problem in the United States right now is chronic loneliness, because people do feel incredibly disconnected. So our normal places that we find support would be our family. What if my family are really toxic? What if they're really abusive? Okay, then I can look to a surrogate family. For some people, that's going to be through their house of faith. And if they say, wow, I had this church and it was really great, but then there were some scandals and I'm disillusioned. There's something called church hurt, because you may have a strong belief and then somebody in the church judges you. I want you to listen to this phrase. I'm going to break it down, because, Courtney, when somebody is judging you, when somebody's judgmental, let's hyphenate the word, break the word, it's mostly mental. Because instead of saying, wow, the master teacher said everybody's flawed, we should love each other, really religious judgmental people say, well, I know that we preach love, but for you, we're going to throw that away because you chose to marry the wrong person, or you chose to vote differently. So for people that say, well, my family's not safe and my religious system that I grew up in is not safe, then I start to look for other places. Yeah, sure, counseling's on the list, but sometimes to be able to say, where can I find people who believe like me? And sometimes when there's been deep hurt, I need to pay attention to the grief work, because grief, if I've been just, shattered by the people that said that they loved me, then I've got to do some grief work. And if I love them, grief goes on as long as you love somebody. How long did you love them? That's how long grief goes on. But if I can find safe people in a grief support group, or maybe to find safe people that have gone through some similar experiences, and then there's one, not to make you giggle, but you'll understand it. And there's something called tailgating. I don't know if you've ever heard of this concept.
I have not.
Right? So when people at a sporting event, when they say, go Gators, when they're able to, and what happens is, even though these are basically complete strangers, you can put yourself in a position, get a ball cap and be able to say, here's the local team, and I'm going to go to some of these meetup things, these events. There used to be something called bowling leagues where people could go and bowl. And then Robert Putnam wrote a book about 20 years ago called Bowling Alone, because in America, fewer people than ever have a third place. And here's an exciting thing. If somebody says, well, I don't know where those places are, cool. There's something called trade associations. So if you're an engineer, there's an association of engineers. If you're in any industry, if you're a realtor, there's an association of realtors. If you're medical, there's a medical association. So you go into the association, hear people with similar values, similar interest. And I'll give you one more, and it's to be able to volunteer. Because if somebody says, I just feel isolated and alone, but I really believe in pet rescue, game on. Because there's a lot of people who say, you too? Me too. I made a wonderful friend. Her name is Kim, because we do pet rescue, and she had this magnet thing on her car that said the importance of who rescued who. And Kim and I built a friendship because she was able to say, everybody should be paying attention to showing basic compassion to animals in need. For some people, they're going to volunteer at the boys club, the girls club, the YMCA. So volunteer can be a way to say, there's a lot of tacky people in the world. but I believe in helping single moms, and I believe in getting backpacks together to get school supplies. I'm going to be a volunteer in the school system. So there are lots of ways. Once I say, you know what, this is painful, but I don't want to stay in pain. I don't want to stay in trauma, right? PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorders, trauma. Watch this. PTG is the psychological term we give to resilience. It's post-traumatic growth.
Ooh,
Post-traumatic growth is being able to say, this is painful, this is hard, but it didn't kill me. What doesn't kill me makes me stronger. I'm going to climb out of this step by step. And as you get started on that journey, you'll meet some amazing people along the way.
Yeah, I totally agree. I met one of my now friends at a work event, one of these associations like you're talking about. And after like, I guess maybe a year, we were talking and she was sharing with me that she went to these events to find community, to find friends. She was like, I knew I needed friendship and I wanted professional women around me. So I just started going to different organizations and different events. And she's like, now I'm surrounded by these powerful women, and I met them just by learning and growing and exploring different networks and different community and building those relationships and those friendships just by showing up and attending. And I was like, that's a brilliant idea. Because she's like, how else am I going to find them? I'm not going to meet them out at a bar. I'm 50 years old. Where am I going to meet them? And so I think that is, those are really great suggestions. What do you think the misconceptions are with people that have been diagnosed with PTSD or with trauma and have had some serious issues? What do you think the misconceptions that they have of themselves or that people have of them?
I've got a friend who's a psychiatrist. His name's Daniel Amen. And Dr. Amen teaches that instead of giving people more pills, we need to give them more life skills. Now, he's the one who wrote a best-selling book, Change Your Brain, Change Your Life. And sometimes there's a tendency when people say, oh my goodness gracious, it's so terrible. You lived through this community crisis event, a shooting, a natural disaster. It was so awful. You're stuck, sucks to be you. Okay, that's a misconception. You don't have to stay stuck in trauma. And sometimes the danger when people get a label, and I want you to know, Courtney, I'm big on labels, right? I always keep healthy snacks. And so on the back of this healthy snack, it tells me that it has, really clean food. It has 190 calories, right? Thank you, plug for Luna. I hope they sponsor you. But I keep healthy snacks. And I love that there's a label on the back for me to see that it has clean ingredients. Labels are fantastic in grocery stores. Labels are terrible for people.
Yeah. Wow.
And so when somebody says, here's your label, you have a psychological problem, sucks to be you. No, stop it.
Yeah.
Labels, and psychiatrists and psychologists use labels to kind of help people see a lane, but I'm afraid that a lot of people get stuck on the label instead of living their life. And when you're, that's good, I should write that down. Stuck on a label instead of living your life because they go, well, I've got this diagnostic code from the DSM and it says, here's how, I'm just stuck. Instead of, yes, this is what happened to you, but what happened to you is not your future, right? Your history is not your destiny. And so when I think about moving people forward, it's being able to strongly give them a sense of hope. It's to give them a sense of courage and to be able to know that just because somebody said you had blank happen when you were a kid, you don't have to stay there. A lot of people, more than you can imagine. Mel Robbins' new book, Let Them, is about people did horrible things to her when she had gone through a bankruptcy. She'd gone through losing everything, and people are like, rah, 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 look at you, big failure. And Mel, her newest book is called Let Them, because she said, I had to get their voices out of my head. Let them criticize me. I'm just going to go live my best life. And now she hangs out with Oprah and people who want to make a difference in the world. Because if you're making a difference in the world, people throw rocks at you. I think it's a Taylor Swift song. I could build a castle out of all the rocks that people have thrown at me and the bricks people have thrown at me. And to know when you say, I'm not going to be stuck by a label, I'm going to build some life skills. And by the way, I'm not against pills. But when I came back from ground zero, I had PTSD. I didn't know what it was. I just knew I was real weepy. I couldn't sleep at all. I didn't understand it. And I went to some people who tried to help me understand it, but it was a traumatic, awful time. And some of them gave me, take these pills. It'll make it better. And I did. But it didn't get better. It kept me from getting worse. Mm-hmm. So I'm not against medication. I'm against staying stuck.
Yeah.
And to only have a label. If you tell a kid, oh my goodness gracious, you're ADD, wow, you're going to have a horrible time in life. Just about every creative person you can think of, from Steve Jobs, who invented Apple Computer, down the line, could have been diagnosed with ADD, but they looked at it as creativity.
Yes.
Not as a limitation. So we're going to move people, Courtney, from a label to living their life. And I believe when you have that perspective, you live life better.
Oh my gosh. I love all this. This is great. This is beautiful. And I think it's great. And because I definitely have recognized in my relationships that in life that people can 100% change. They were one person, and who they are now is it's like they've become 3 different versions of themselves, and they just evolve and they change. And I think that people do get stuck, and they've decided that this is just who I am at any age. And yeah, it's definitely hard to teach an old dog new tricks. But I think that if, when people have the perspective of knowing that they can evolve, that they can change, it enables them to have hope and to know that, look, this is just a phase. This is just a moment. And I love this story, that you gave of Mel Robbins. I mean, exactly. We are going to have people that are going to point fingers and call, especially when you're trying to do big things, but you just move through it and you evolve because it doesn't define you. And what would you advise family members or friends that see someone that's struggling or being challenged? What would you advise them to do to help that person or support that person, not judge that person? What would you advise those that are around somebody that's struggling to do? How would you encourage them to move forward?
I'm glad you asked that, because there's an author who wrote a book and about this habit that he has when he reads about a person who's in a scandal or who blows up their life on YouTube. He sends them either a balloon bouquet or he sends them a cake pop, because he said everybody on their worst day needs to be reminded it's not your last day. And so he shows them grace. So if I know someone who's having their worst day and it's like, oh, this is terrible, the first thing on the worst day is to remind them, hey, listen, this isn't your last day. You want to meet for a coffee? So to think through instead of judgmental, we're going to move from judgmental, which is I got my life together and I can't believe that they're so screwed up. Okay, we're all screwed up. Stop it. We're going to move from judgmental over to developmental. And that means to be able to go to the part of my brain to say, I wonder how I could help this person, encourage this person. Sometimes you'll hear about somebody and you hear their mom died, and maybe you didn't get a chance to go to the funeral. So you go to Publix and they do that Hallmark card, buy one, get one, and you get a sympathy card and you send it to them. And then that second card, there's a section in Hallmark cards called encouragement. And you send it about 4 to 6 weeks later to say, I know you lost your mom. And after a month or two, it seems like everybody forgets. And I just want you to know I'm here for you. And here's a Starbucks gift card. But if you like, maybe we can get together. I'd love to catch up. The biggest thing, Courtney, to me, when I know somebody has face planted or life has run over them, is for them to know you're not alone. You have people, you have community. And even if you don't feel like you have community, hi, my name's Dwight, you have me. I'll be there for you.
This is just just full of lots of really great ideas and insights. And I really appreciate all of these, the direction that you are advising people. I think it's really insightful and helpful. And for those that are at a really high level, those peak performers, whether they're military, they're corporate leaders, they're, athletes. Uh, what is it that you have found separates those that continue to thrive from those that do get stuck? What is it that they're doing differently, you found?
I love that you asked that, because the greatest leader that ever lived, when he had an opportunity, he says, you know what? If you want to be great, you have to be the servant of all. And if you know the story, he gets down and he washes their feet. And that was a time where people wore sandals, and it was a muddy mess. And they were like, what are you doing? And I'm modeling for you. And so the people I see that do the greatest, when the terrorist attacks of 9/11 happened, a friend and I, Dr. Jeff Gardier, we co-hosted a TV show in Midtown Manhattan. And we didn't know, at least I didn't know, one of the people who was doing some part-time work on our TV show was in a Bible study with somebody who was in charge of security for the Twin Towers and worked at the New York City Police Department. So the terrorist attacks happened on a Tuesday morning. By Tuesday afternoon, Mayor Giuliani's office, and then the mayor was so kind because the mayor said, you want to come help? Do you have these credentials? Right? I did. And I got to pick a team of 19 other people so that we could go and help. And what I saw with Mayor Giuliani, and I'll give him some praise because he was in a terrible car accident not long ago, is he went to every funeral. He was everywhere. Now, he was certainly not a perfect person, but the one thing that he modeled that impressed me the most after one of the worst days in the history of the United States, at least in modern times, maybe Pearl Harbor was worse, is that Mayor Giuliani served people. He empowered people. It was about their pain. It wasn't about his gain. It wasn't a media opportunity to be on TV and say, look how great I am because I'm a government person. It was, you know what, what can I resource these people with to help them? The greatest leader, the master teacher said, would be the greatest servant. And when I see people going through an incredibly painful time, they're not hunkering down to protect their career. They're not hunkering down to protect their money or their pension. It doesn't even matter. It's about the people that are hurting. And when you can serve somebody who's hurting, to me, that models greatness.
Yes, I couldn't agree with you more. And it's a beautiful perspective, because I think that when you do fall, when something does traumatic happen, you can, willow away and accept it for what it is and not, step forward or lean in. And I think that is exactly what Mayor Giuliani did. He stepped up and he leaned in. Mel Robbins did the same thing. She stepped up and she leaned in. Whether or not, you talk about the greatest leader of all time. What did he do? He was a servant and he leaned in to figure out, how can I help people through my experience and through what it is that these traumatic these moments of challenges and not running away, but leaning in and saying, okay, I had this, how can I help people? And they do become the greatest leaders. And I think that many people will continue to look at them for that moment of adversity, but let them, exactly like, Mel says, let them be who they are and step up. And I think that everything you're saying is just a wonderful reminder of these leaders that did lean in. And how is it that you think that an individual that maybe isn't as a great leader yet, or doesn't really want to be a great leader, what do you think that their role could be when something happens, if they want to find that opportunity to find where their place is and stop the pain, so to speak? What would you advise them to do to try and help them get through those moments, even though they're not a significant leader?
Everybody's a leader to somebody, right? And so we're going to remind them to take a breath, calm down their brain. And then I'm going to say it's about up, UP. It's about up. Instead of blow up, we're going to grow up. And sometimes when something bad happens, everybody, wants to blame. I call it ABCs, argue, blame, complain. Instead of, well, let's grow up. Something terrible happened. And after something terrible, what can I do? Well, the number one thing I can do after I look up, God, give me strength, give me wisdom, then Courtney, I'm going to show up. Because when I show up, just the ministry of presence, some people call that. If I just show up to say, can I help? There are wonderful organizations, the Samaritan's Purse, the American Red Cross, when you look at the Salvation Army. So many times after a disaster, just people saying, I'll show up, I'll help. I don't really know, but if you'll show me, I'll try to do what I can, right? So instead of blow up or, to be afraid of screwing up, no, we're going to change the up. We're going to change it over to the grow up is we all have a bad day. We all have a bad experience. When somebody says, oh, did you hear that blank person went through a bankruptcy or a divorce or something terrible happened? Well, listen, buckle up. Remember, it's a circle. They're going through a crisis event now. Everybody goes through a crisis event. Everybody may be in a car accident. Life happens. Life is painful. But if I can grow through that pain, and that's where showing up, and when I show up, as there's opportunity to maybe, give them a cup of water, but maybe there's an opportunity to say, hey, you're not in this alone. When they say, what makes you tick? What makes you do that? You can just look up and say, I learned from some other people that we all go through tough times. And when we help each other, we get through the tough time a lot better.
Yeah, that's great. But you talk about the circle, for people, especially for peak performers, you want to feel prepared. You want to feel like that what's coming in the horizon. And we know, as you said, we're going to face adversity. What can someone do and to feel like, I know that I feel very uncomfortable with the, quote unquote, unknown. I want to prepare to make sure that I am ready for whatever is going to be thrown at me. Like, I feel as though that, okay, if I know that I'm, going to be faced with something, I want to be prepared. What is it that someone can do to prepare themselves for these moments of impact, if you will, and so that they feel as though that they know that they can get through it better, or they know that they can process it better and be able to come out stronger and not resort to the low, whatever you want to call it, the low energies or negative thoughts, or however you want to, whatever that perspective is. What can someone do to prepare?
Right. So we're going to prepare our brain with daily rituals, daily routines. In a book called Atomic Habits, James Clear talked about if you have certain routines, and he explains it so well. By the way, I hope everybody watching will pick up Atomic Habits, the most popular book on creating habit change in 3 minutes in the last 50 years. Of all the nonfiction books, it became the most profitable. He's not a psychologist, a psychiatrist, a social worker, a counselor. He's not a member of the clergy. He's not a business executive. He just had his face shattered in a horrible accident, had to relearn how to think and function. So we're going to build some basic habits. There's a principle I use. You'll always miss what you're not trained to see. So, how can I, if I'm a little bit, kind of paranoid about, OMG, the world is a scary place. Well, you'll notice behind me, right, I read books. And so it's either read books or short stack or being able to have audiobooks, Kindle, being able to say, I'm going to gain information from people that I know, people I trust, people I see their wisdom, their insight. James Clear, when I heard about that book, I went, because I'm kind of in the psychological world, and I thought, not a psychologist, not a psychiatrist, and then I saw the numbers of books, 10 million, 20 million, 30 million, 40 million, and it's like, wow, if 10% of the country are reading this, and why? If you have daily, it's what Dr. Amen talks about, if you have daily rituals, daily patterns where it's automatic to be able to wake up on the first alarm, it's automatic to be able to build your morning rituals and morning routines. You don't have to have willpower anymore. It's automatic to exercise. It's automatic to read. It's automatic to journal. It's automatic. And so what am I doing? And if we take the brain, we turn it this way, and just picture like we're filling it up. This is where I do my best thinking. All right. So my daily rituals, my daily patterns, as I'm doing that, now something amazing happens. I've got a full tank. Well, when life happens, because I don't know what day that will happen, but when life happens, I've got a full tank. I'm going to manage it better. There's a principle which I heard about at the United States Air Force Academy in Colorado Springs, and it's called, no matter how bad the situation, you can always make it worse. And I know, isn't that great?
That's hilarious and awesome at the same time.
Because it's true.
So true.
No matter how bad, you can make it worse. And so what do? We tell people, take a breath. Don't make it worse. Anyway, so
that's
you can
great.
compare, but you can always know, you know what? And what they teach is take a breath. Don't make it worse. Don't push any buttons. No matter what the plane is doing, the aircraft is doing, just take a breath. Don't make it worse. Because you can always make it worse. I think that's true in a lot of life, isn't it? Not just airplanes.
100%. Yes. Yes. And I think that, with peak performers, when these moments come, and even for non-peak performers, but I think that a lot of us, what we do is that we end up finding ourselves not really having a lot of balance in life because we're constantly striving. We're constantly seeking that in which we have set our mind to, our goals towards. How would you advise someone that, is putting themselves in, certain situations? How would you advise them to find balance in life and being more well-rounded rather than focusing on one area of life? How can they balance that wheel? Look at the wheel of life. You have 9 areas of life: spiritually, emotionally, physically, socially, go on. But in what area would cause you a flat tire in your journey of life? Well, if you are a striver that, whether it's a physical performance or if it's with your job, how can that person find balance while still being the striver that they are?
Yeah. So think about NASCAR or one of the emerging sports, Formula One. All of those vehicles, those are multi-million-dollar vehicles. They all pit stop. They all have a daily time, not daily, but they all have a regular time of recharge. And so that person who's, I'm trying to get it right. There's a book called Essentialism Greg McKeown wrote a couple of years ago, and it's built around you can't have 10 priorities, you have one priority. And so if my goal is I want to be balanced, okay, then I know every day I've got those brain rituals, those healthy rituals that I build into my day. For most people, they can do that in about an hour. And if they say, well, I don't have an hour to recharge, to fill the tank, I'll say, how much time do you have to walk when you run out of gas? Yeah, well, I don't want to take time for my health. Okay, how much time do you have to be in a hospital? I don't have time to really develop my job, to be a peak performer, to really be the go-to gal, the go-to guy in my company, my industry. Well, how much time do you have to be unemployed? And so keeping that tank full, so for me, that's going to be, I'm old school, with a pen and a notepad. Some people do it on an electronic tablet, but it's to be able to know, here's my categories of life. Good. How am I doing in those categories of life? What do I need to change in those categories of life? Because if somebody says, I know I eat all the wrong foods, I stay up too late, I watch crap, I'm totally addicted to Netflix series or whatever, and I wonder why I can't get anything done with my life. Okay, you don't need a counselor. You don't need a psychologist. You probably need, just like an old grandma to be able to say, stop it. You're wasting time over here complaining about what you don't get done over here. You only get a certain amount of time on the planet. If you spend it differently, you get different outcome. And if somebody says, well, I want to spend 20 minutes a day reading a book in my lane, in my industry that's going to help me be a peak performer, that 20 minutes will come back huge. I only have 20 minutes. I want to walk. I want to exercise. I want to do CrossFit. I want to do something for my physical well-being. Huge. But if you spend that 20 minutes saying, you know what, I'm going to have 5 more sugary drinks and watch all the stuff happening, with cute cats on TikTok, but I'm still going to be a peak performer. Nothing against cute cats, but it's not going to make you a peak performer, right? We do animal rescue. I understand taking care of cute cats. They're super cute. They're funny. it's not going to make you the best in your industry unless you step back and say, what's essential? Not 10 priorities. Courtney, we nail it down. What's my single priority? My single priority for our conversation was, and even though I didn't know about the Kentucky connection, so that's so cool to me because everybody from Kentucky takes care of everybody from Kentucky. That is so cool.
It's so true. Yeah.
It is so true, right?
Yeah.
Because mountain people take care of mountain people.
That's right.
My single focus was for people to be able to step back and remember there's a circle in life. And if you're in a crisis, hang on, get some hope. Don't be afraid. You will get through this. Now, it won't be easy and it won't be fast, but you'll get through it if you, instead of making it worse, what is making it worse? If somebody's going through a real difficult time and they say, you know what? I think that I'm going to go get drunk. Okay, that's not going to make it better. I'm going to go get a DUI. Still not better. I'm going to, you know what? I'm going to go find some stranger in a bar and make decisions that later in my industry, people will say, wow. And what were you thinking when you went to the Coldplay concert? I mean, exactly what went through your mind, right? So when people say, this is uncomfortable, if somebody's in a distant relationship, hallelujah, go work on your distant relationship. Because if you say, I'm not going to work on my relationship, I'm just going to go over here, right? If you don't have a hard conversation in your relationship, you will be in litigation over here because the relationship will end. If you're in a crisis, get honest. Get some help as you need to, because then you're going to come out of the crisis. You're going to learn. You're going to grow. You're going to get post-traumatic growth. And what's going to happen? You're going to now have resilient strength and the awareness, because that's what happens in an adult brain. The awareness of life on this planet is hard, but we are blessed. There will be flat tires. Life will happen. Give yourself an extra hour to get to the airport if you have an international flight. You're going to need it. And being able to plan a little better, because to know sometimes luggage gets lost. Your valuable stuff, carry on the plane with you. Don't put it in your packed luggage. And being able to know life happens. And now what happens with the crisis? There's still crisis, but what's exciting to me, Courtney, they're more manageable. So here's my circle. If I had it on a diagram, I'd make that crisis period shorter. So they get fired from a job, something changes, but it doesn't take them years to get through it. It's still painful, just like with post-traumatic stress disorder. That's a real condition. Let me point out, it is not a psychiatric condition. It's in the psychiatric guide. It's based on what happened to you. Sometimes they'll say, what's wrong with that person? No. What happened to that person? And so the person in trauma, where they have new skills, they're in that part of the circle for a shorter period of time, right? In a crisis, coming out of a crisis, and that coming out of a crisis is a shorter period of time. And now they can buckle up because they've learned resilient strength. They can navigate around. I don't think when something bad happens at work, then I'm going to go get drunk and get a DUI. I learned a hard lesson. I have enough DUIs. I've learned a lesson. Not going to do that. Going to go home, read a book. It'll be better, right? So what happens is that circle, the length of time in that section changes because now we have wisdom. We have new skills. And when you have new skills and those life skills, I think then you can go and share that idea with others.
Oh, my goodness. Okay. I love this idea that you can shorten that trauma level down, that time frame down by having the right tools and for resiliency. I think that is wonderful and brilliant. And the other part that you'd mentioned, I'm a Formula One fan, and the Netflix series Drive to Survive, I'm like, love it. And now what I do is that when I'm in a moment where I just need a push, I literally think to myself, push, and I and putting all in, all that I got. And then when I find those moments where I need to take a step back for that balance, I literally think to myself, box. Like, I've got to go back into the cockpit. I've got to rest and know I need to spend time with my daughters, know that I need to spend time with my friends, or just time alone. And I think another part that you mentioned was, having those, what can you do that's productive versus non-productive? And what I think in having that list of of items, those go-tos that you know that you can prepare for. My daughter, she had these comebacks of like, when somebody says something to me, I know what I'm going to say. Well, I said, why not look at it as an opportunity to flip the script? How can you, instead of thinking of what bad could happen, let's start thinking about what good could happen from that comment. Be like, oh, okay, what exactly are you trying to accomplish with that? And she's like, Mom, I can't say anything like that. But I think that if we had a list of tools that we could go to, that rather than going out and getting drunk, rather than, which results in a DUI or, decisions that we regret, whatever the case may be. I think if we had a list of things that we knew that we could go to in those moments, like, I recognize that I'm in this place, I have option A or I have option B. What is it that I know that I typically go down this route? Instead, let's look at the list of things that I know that I would want to do, whether it be volunteer, read, go on a walk, something that's productive. I love that idea that you have of like just having that list of what could be productive and what are those different options that you could choose from that will help you in each of those areas of life. I think that's great.
Right. So what you're describing, and I'll say this right for your girl, adolescent brain is impulsive. Adolescent brain is able to say, well, you're a bigger one. Adolescent brain gets its feelings hurt a lot, right? Adult brain, you don't really hit that till mid to late 20s. But an adult brain is, sticks and stones will break my bones, words will never hurt me. There's something wrong with them.
Yeah.
Because I didn't do anything to start this. So if I can move somebody from adolescent brain, and fair notice, are there plenty of guys at age 50 still in their adolescent brain? 100%.
100%. Yes.
It's really simple. Just see, where do their socks and their dirty underwear go? Is there like a trail in the house of their dirty laundry? Right. Because an adult knows laundry should be in a hamper or in the washing machine or folded up somewhere. Adolescent brain, adult brain. And when I'm able to, and everybody starts here, that's just life, right? And what we learn, maturity, let me give you a different word. We learn wisdom. And that's where books come in. That's where mentors come in. That's where people who've got some battle scars, they've got some miles. And when I'm able to go from impulsivity to insight, now all of a sudden this person says, I don't want to make a bad situation worse. You know what? Life happens. This person always, well, the teacher's stupid, and they argue.
The victim mindset. Yes.
Exactly. And this one says life happens. Life isn't fair. A fair is a place that you go ride the Ferris wheel, eat some cotton candy, and hope that your livestock, wins a blue ribbon. That's a fair. In life, nothing is fair.
Yeah.
Makes sense?
I love that. It's great. Beautiful visuals. Amazing. And just to kind of wrap up here, if you were to give like 3 tools that you feel, I love your box breathing, breathe in through your nose and out through your mouth. What are some other tools that you would recommend if you were to give 3 tools that you found the most effective for someone that is in those moments where maybe they have a gun in their lap, or they've just had a really traumatic moment in which they want to be impulsive and go back to their old ways? What would you advise that person in that moment to do to help them kind of push through and know that they can get to the other side?
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity to challenge your viewers. So when the bad stuff happens, right? Stop it. Just stop. Take a breath. No matter what the bad stuff. This side of my brain, you probably growing up somewhere, you saw like in cartoons, there would be like a demon on one shoulder and an angel on the other shoulder. Well, there's a little bit of truth to that, because the left prefrontal cortex, this lobe of the brain, is my impulsivity. And if I can get somebody to just stop for about a minute and just stop And I say stop because impulsively will make it worse. And some people will run to a fight, and picking a fight with somebody does not solve the fight. It makes the fight bigger. Some people will say, you know what, we'll just sue them. Okay, litigation doesn't happen much. Annihilation happens a lot. And they go to litigation because they want to go and continue to fight. And those divorce cases, those lawsuits go on for years. And the only people that win, it's like in a war. The only people in a war that win are the people that make the tanks and the guns and the bullets. Lawyers in litigation, because it doesn't stay in litigation, it goes to annihilation, to decimation. I will destroy the earth. Okay, stop. Stop. If you're spending $15,000 to fight in a divorce over a couch that costs $5,000, stop. Yeah. Let me get you a ledger sheet to be able to look at and see, you could go buy a new couch for you, and give the old couch to one of the lawyers because you're spending more money than the couch is worth. Stop. So in that crisis, if I can get people to stop, take a breath, because my impulsive side of my brain, and to be able to take a breath and to get a little more creative to know, okay, this is awful. It's painful. It's going to hurt. It's not going to be easy. It's not going to be fast. But if I can not make it worse, if I could then, since I've stopped, now I'm going to look, who can I turn to? Who's a trusted friend? On the worst day, who do you have to call? And if people say, well, I don't have anybody, Dwight. Okay, well then let's work on building some relationship. When people say, I don't have anybody at all, then go be that person for somebody else. Because then, like you said, it'll flip the script and somebody will be that person for you. There was one of the most popular Christmas movies in history, It's a Wonderful Life, is about a guy who didn't
my favorite.
Didn't feel cared for. But everybody forgets. It's a little bit kind of a dark story, even though Jimmy Stewart's favorite film, Coppola's favorite film. It starts because a guy felt used and suicidal. And he's jumping off of a bridge. So it's odd, the most popular Christmas story, right? And, it's in a manger in Bethlehem. We all know that story. And here's one of the most popular stories of a suicidal guy. And what changed? Because when he said it wouldn't even matter if I was born, and he found out, guess what? It would matter. It would matter. Your life matters. Your life matters. And when I can get somebody to stop, look up, pray for help, look around to see who's there. But remember, it all starts with a stop.
I love that. Oh, this is beautiful. Thank you so much, Dwight. I feel like I could talk to you for just hours. You have so much wisdom and insight and really great tools for people to go to. And I just find it really helpful for this conversation. And I know that the listeners, and how should someone best reach out to you if they wanted to continue this conversation with you, whether it be an organization, leadership, or an individual? How can someone get a hold of you?
LinkedIn.com/N Dwight Bain, or on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. Yep. Even on TikTok. And I will say no cute cat videos on my TikTok. It's all 30 seconds of practical insight to be able to make your brain and your life better. On all social media, I'm just simple DWIGHTBAIN, and people can reach up. But my hope is, and this is why I want to have this conversation, is that they'll take a tool, they'll go, oh, I heard Dwight and Courtney talking, they were talking about this, and you know what, I heard that, and they'll take that idea and they'll share it with somebody else. And here's what's exciting, because Courtney, they'll take that idea and they'll help somebody that you and I don't know, and it will that will ripple out, and it'll make things better for people that we don't know. But common unity, to be unified. And we live in a very divided time. But when people are kind in crisis, it doesn't matter their political party, their religious background, their gender, their orientation. What matters is you were kind in a very difficult time. Thank you. And I know part of that is because you may be kind to me in a difficult situation, because we are all in this together.
Beautiful. Beautiful. It's the whole point of Peakality, is just to be a ripple effect, have a foundation for people to exactly what you're saying. I heard this. Let me try this tool. product, whatever, program. I love it. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
If this conversation resonated with you, please subscribe to the Peakality Podcast and share it with someone who could use encouragement today. Remember, growth is possible in every area of life, and when individuals grow, teams and families thrive. Thanks so much for joining us.